Hi, it's Terry. Welcome back. And today we are going to talk about, and I am going to demonstrate how I put the color in my journal. We're going to take this very plain Jane journal and we're going to turn it into something extraordinarily colorful. We are going to fill the pages inside of this journal with color. You may be wondering why I've got this dish of apples and say, oh, that's a strange way to begin a class. It might be, maybe not. The reason why I have the apples is to show you that each of these apples is quite different. Look at the coloration, look at the texture. They're all unique. They're all different. I learned that during a color class in college, that we're very unique, and although we are using the same materials and employing the same techniques, our results are going to be different. Just like Mother Nature, just like apples, just like snowflakes. So embrace your differences, enjoy the color class, this quick little lesson in color, and let's start making some pages. Let's start putting some color on a page. I've protected my working surface with a newsprint pad, and I am going to keep this after I'm finished because it's going to be filled with great color. I've filled a small dish with some water, and I've got a fairly wide paintbrush. I also have my gesso, so I'm ready with those. I've started with some gesso and a paintbrush that I've dipped in water. It's slightly wet, it's not saturated. I'm going to dip this in and I'm going to start applying my gesso to my cover all over. Doesn't even matter, can even get it underneath. And if you notice, I am not being fussy about this. Actually, the less fussy that you are, the better. We're going to coat this entire cover, front and back. This is where a little patience comes in handy. So just a warning, the gesso has a tendency to take a little bit of time to dry. You may want to allow enough time for that to happen. If you're new to gesso, I'm just giving you a heads up. If not, you already know. So it does stay workable for just a little while, but it dries fairly quickly because gesso, the basis of gesso, is chalk. And that will give, see, I've even coated my little strings. This will give me a beautiful basis to begin adding color to. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to use a heat gun to dry this, and I will add another coat. So let me do that and we'll be back. I flipped my journal over, and now I'm looking at the inside cover with this flap. I'm going to apply gesso not only to this inside cover, but also underneath this flap. So when we apply color, it'll be nice and neat when you first open this. You'll just see nice color. So allow me to do my gesso and coat the inside of this book, and again, we'll be back. Through the magic of preparation, I've taken my plain journal and I've applied 2 coats of gesso to the front, including this flap, and it's important that you really gesso this flap. You want this whole to be nice and sturdy when it comes to adding your fibers at the end of completing your journal. I've also applied 2 coats of gesso to the back. Additionally, the inside has been coated with 2 layers of gesso. And I coated the flap with 3 coats of gesso. I want this really, really sturdy. And if you can see, this clasp has been covered with gesso. It doesn't matter to me, that's okay. And inside, as I mentioned before, you can see where the gesso is extended inside. So when you first open this, everything will be covered with color. That's very important. It's the little details that really count. I've also given this back cover 2 coats of gesso. So that's where your patience is going to come in handy, as well as a handy dandy dryer or heat gun or something, because you really want to apply your gesso and let it dry. That will give you a nice base for applying color. And let's get our color and our supplies. We're going to use some pencils, and we're going to start adding color to these pages. Just a word about the inside of the journal and the signatures. I have taken the opportunity to apply gesso to the inside of each of these signatures. However, on this particular page, I did not apply the gesso. You can actually see there's a little bit of a variance in color and a sheen. I did that on purpose. What I'm going to do is I'm bringing in my colors, my crayons, my Neocolors, and if you have wax crayons that are watercolors, you may use those also. Doesn't matter what brand they are. You'll get pretty much the same results. I work very intuitively. So again, this is where the lesson of the apple will come in. We may be using the same things, our results are going to be different. Keep that in mind. This is just a suggestion. I want to show you a suggestion. I've slipped some cardstock underneath my page, and this is going to be important to keep the other pages clear from color, but it will also give me a nice piece of scrap paper when I'm finished, so I can add more things. I've applied my color randomly, just a green crayon, watercolor crayon randomly. I am not thinking about this too much. It's kind of intuitive. It's tough to give you an idea of what I really do, because when I work, I do try to work intuitively. I just let the colors talk to me. And you see, I've blended color here. It doesn't really matter what you do. Sometimes I'll take it and I'll even put color number 3, just for the heck of it. Okay, so I've got 3 colors, kind of mishmash. Looks like a little kid did it. You're going to see what happens. Okay, we're ready for the next step. We're ready to start turning this mishmash of color into something extraordinary. I've taken my gesso, again, just plain gesso, white gesso, paintbrush. I've kind of wet my paintbrush a little bit, dipped it into the gesso, kind of get the excess off, right? And this is where the magic happens. I'm going to take my gesso and start, here's a technical term for you, smush. I'm going to smush this all over. And the gesso, if you need a little more water, that's fine. Keep your brush kind of damp. Look how pretty that is. Look at how beautiful these colors are starting to blend. And if I feel like I want to stop, I'll just take my brush and do this. And that'll give me a nice background. I'll use this and something else. That's giving me some scrap. I've got one side finished. Take a little more water. Take a little more gesso. Smush around. Again, the technical term, smush. And I'm almost finished with this page, believe it or not. Okay. That's it. That's it. That's given me beautiful color, just gesso and watercolor crayon. 2 simple materials on cardstock. Again, remember, this was not gessoed to begin with. This was right directly on the cardstock, mixing the watercolor crayon with the gesso and a little bit of water. So we'll allow this to dry, and we will move on to the next step. We have a lovely Monet-like background all prepped and ready. It's dry. It's important to let this background dry. I'm taking the same crayon, watercolor crayon, that I used to scribble the color in this background. And now I'm going to take a baby wipe, a plain old baby wipe. You know, get them anywhere in the grocery or big box store, whatever. Just a plain old baby wipe. I do like taking this and squeezing it to remove some of the initial moisture. Otherwise, I find sometimes it's just a little too moist. So I've got my baby wipe ready. I also have a little piece of paper towel at the ready. I want more color in this page. So now I'm going to apply it randomly, but gently, around the outside of this page. Again, don't overthink this. It's not rocket science. Don't worry about, oh geez, am I doing this right or wrong? Again, remember the apple. You're going to see this apple a lot. I'm telling you, it's a great lesson because we're all different, just like apples and snowflakes. So we've got this color, and I have applied it randomly around the perimeter of this page. I'm not too worried about it. I really like the way it's developing. I want to add a little more yellow. So I'm going to take this and use this crayon sideways this time. Again, does not matter whether you're using a Neo color. And if you notice, I'm putting it right over the edge of this. I'm not overthinking this. Do not overthink it. That's where all the magic happens. I've got my damp baby wipe. It's damp. I've squeezed most of the moisture out of this. I'm taking my baby wipe, and now I'm going to start very slowly and very carefully rubbing the color from the outside, smushing it into the inside. And again, this is lightly. I'm applying very light pressure. There's not a lot of pressure going on here. I don't want to remove the color. I just want to kind of smear it around the page. And that gives me even more color intensity. And now I'm taking my baby wipe. If you notice, I'm turning the baby wipe. And this is quick. This was fast. I'm going to take this layer and allow it to dry again. I'll be back. The background is dry again. I'm taking two crayons again, my blue and the green, the same blue and green that I initially began scribbling color on this page with. I want to intensify this color yet again. I've taken the green and I've applied it randomly to the outside of the page. Again, it's not rocket science. Quick, fast. I'm taking the blue. I'm applying a little to the inside of the page. Again, looks a little kind of wackadoodle. That's okay. We're going to take the same baby wipe. Turn it if you'd like. Find a section that's relatively clean. Start smushing the color in again. Start blending. You're using this baby wipe just like a blending tool. I love it. And if there's any rough edges of color, like sometimes you can see that there's a little bit of rough texture. I kind of like that. It gives me an opportunity to add a little texture. And if you rub a little harder, you're going to eliminate some of that. Again, turn your baby wipe. Don't be afraid to move it around. Don't be afraid to smush the color. All right. Now we're getting somewhere. This color is beginning to intensify, which is what I really, really like. It's kind of streaky, and that's okay too. I'm going to take my paper towel while it's still damp, and I'm pushing this color into the page. I'm taking the paper towel, leaning into it, and twisting it. And that gives us a beautiful cloud-like texture and color on this page. Again, that was using simple crayons and gesso, a paper towel, and some baby wipes. We're ready to prep our next page. I like turning my pages and finding different colorways. So this time we're going to use 3 colors. I'm using fuchsia, kind of an orange red, and an orange. Again, with watercolor crayons. This is the watercolor crayon. These pages were prepped with gesso, so they're ready to receive my color. Again, I've chosen 3 coordinating colors. I have a damp baby wipe ready, and I have a paper towel ready. Simple, simple, simple supplies. We're going to start, we're going to apply the color. Again, quickly. You can see the texture in this because the gesso was applied. I'm just putting the color on rapidly and randomly. And I want to kind of balance my color a little bit. This time I'm going to, oh, what the heck, let's just color this whole thing. And if you'll notice, in the background, I've got my cardstock underneath. You can also use wax paper, that's fine. But I'm protecting the page that I've already done from the page that's receiving the color. And as I said, this will give me a lovely background, the basis for a background in the future. To the fuchsia, I like orange a lot. Orange makes me feel happy. So we're going to throw some orange in. It doesn't look like it's receiving the color, but trust me, it is. You will see nuances and variations of color. And I used the side. Now I'm using the end of the crayon. And I'm really putting it on. I'm laying on this crayon. I'm giving it a lot of pressure to get a lot of product on this page. I'm going to take my red, and I'm just going to put a little bit on the side. I just want to smush a little bit on the side. Again, I'm working intuitively. I'm taking my baby wipe. I've wrung most of the moisture out of this baby wipe. And I'm going to start again, smushing color. And again, do you notice? I keep turning my baby wipe. You're going to get a random kind of hodgepodge of color. I'm going to take, this time I'm taking it and rubbing it right away. This is very subtle. Again, remember the apples. You can keep your color subtle, or you can keep your color vivid. It's your journal. Love it both ways. I'll take color any way I can get it. Okay, again, I'm turning my paper towel and just kind of buffing the page. This is the difference when you've got a gessoed background. Your color's going to come up differently. But again, I want to intensify. So again, it's all about layers. I've taken my pink, I'm putting it down. Take my orange, putting it down. And now I'm going to take my baby wipe again, smush it. And this time it's very gentle, and I'm leaving a lot of the pigment on the page, trying not to remove too much. I just kind of want to blend these colors together. And again, the pressure on this baby wipe is relatively light. I like the way that's coming along. Let's just blend that together. Okay. Take my paper towel, and this time I'm just blotting. I'm going to leave a lot of the color on the page. Again, another page has been prepped. There's color on this page. Just using watercolor crayons and gesso. Very simple, very effective. And voila, there we have it. We've used our gesso with our watercolor crayons to make 2 lovely backgrounds. The next step is to use our watercolor pencils for backgrounds. Let's see what happens with the same ingredients, watercolor pencils and gesso.